The year was 3075, and the Earth had lived in peace for centuries. It was a time of prosperity, where humans had moved beyond their old conflicts and focused on building, exploring, and expanding their influence throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council had long recognized Earth's importance, offering protection and guidance, ensuring no alien force dared to challenge humanity. But peace, it seemed, was something humanity could no longer take for granted. The sun shone brightly over the blue and green planet, casting a warm glow on the Earth's advanced cities. People went about their daily lives, unaware that the most powerful and ancient political force in the galaxy, the Galactic Council, was preparing to make a move. They had grown arrogant, thinking Earth would always obey their commands. In a massive command center deep in Earth's most secure military base, Captain Elena stood, staring at the large holodisplay in front of her. The room was filled with tension, as every military leader and high-ranking official knew something was coming. But none were prepared for what came next. A sharp beeping sound filled the room, signaling an incoming transmission. Captain Elena's hand trembled slightly as she reached to answer the call. A hologram flickered to life, showing the cold, calculating face of a Galactic Council representative. The alien leader's voice echoed throughout the command center, carrying an ominous tone. "This is the Galactic Council," the alien said. "After careful consideration, we have decided that Earth must submit to our authority. The peace you've enjoyed for centuries will now end. You will comply, or we will take action." The room fell silent. 1,000 thoughts rushed through the minds of every person present. Some looked at one another, confused. Others felt the cold grip of fear. But Captain Elena did not flinch. She had seen something the others had not. A shift in the air, a warning, and a fire within her that could not be ignored. "Submit. To you." Captain Elena's voice was firm and cold, cutting through the silence like a blade. "You don't get to tell Earth what to do anymore." The alien representative's expression twisted with surprise, then anger. "You misunderstand, human. This is no longer a negotiation. The Galactic Council has decided, and your planet will fall in line. We've waited long enough for you to understand your place. If you resist, there will be consequences." Captain Elena stepped forward, her eyes locked on the hologram. "Your threat means nothing to us. Earth is no longer under your control." A murmur ran through the room as the shock set in. The other officers stared at her in disbelief. The Galactic Council was a force beyond comprehension, and no one had ever dared defy them. But Captain Elena knew something that none of the others did. Humanity had changed. They were no longer the vulnerable, fragile species they had once been. They had the power to fight back. The hologram flickered again, the galactic representative's face growing darker. "Very well, human. You have made your choice. Prepare yourselves, for the consequences of defying the Galactic Council will be catastrophic. We are coming." The transmission cut off, leaving the room in stunned silence. Captain Elena stood tall, her eyes burning with resolve. "Prepare the fleet," she said to her officers, her voice calm but with an undeniable edge. "We're going to show them that Earth isn't a planet to be controlled. We will fight." As the words left her lips, the room came alive with motion. Officers scrambled to their posts, calling in reports, activating systems, and preparing weapons. The warships, long kept in secret, powered up for the first time in centuries. Earth had always been prepared for peace. But now, for the first time in centuries, Earth was ready for war. The Galactic Council had made its mistake. They had underestimated humanity. Out in space, the Council's vast fleet had already begun its journey towards Earth. Massive ships, dark and menacing, approached with unmatched speed, cloaked in arrogance. They believed Earth's peaceful past would be its downfall. But they had no idea what they were walking into. Back on Earth, the leaders had gathered in an underground war room, hidden away from the eyes of the world. Captain Elena's voice echoed in the silence. "We've been too long without a fight. But now, we take the fight to them." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. There was no turning back now. The peaceful times were over. The Galactic Council had crossed the line, and humanity was done talking. A single, slow-motion shot followed the captain as she turned towards the large digital map of the galaxy, showing the Council's fleet closing in. She did not flinch. Instead, her lips curled into a determined smile. "We're not just going to fight them," she said, her voice steady and unwavering. "We're going to show them who they're dealing with." As she spoke, the camera pulled back, revealing the warships powering up, ready for battle. The battle of a lifetime was about to begin. The Galactic Council had made their first and final mistake, and now humanity would remind them of the true meaning of defiance. The warships of Earth sat silently in the vastness of space, hidden in the shadow of an asteroid belt, far from the prying eyes of the Galactic Council's scouts. The hum of machinery and the low, constant buzz of communication filled the air inside the command center. No one spoke. The silence itself was a heavy presence, as if every officer knew the gravity of the moment. Captain Alina stood before the large holographic map, her eyes tracing the movements of the Galactic Council's fleet, now only a few days away. She wasn't just staring at the map. She was calculating. The Council's arrogance had been their downfall, and now it was Earth's time to strike back. But Alina knew the stakes. If they failed, Earth would be lost. "How long until their fleet arrives?" she asked without looking away from the glowing map. "3 days, Captain," the communications officer replied, his voice tense. They've crossed the halfway point. The countdown had begun. Earth's fate rested in their hands, and there was no room for error. Captain Alina had worked tirelessly for months to prepare for this moment. The warships were ready, the crews trained, and the weapons primed. But it wasn't just Earth's military power they were depending on. It was their ingenuity. Humans had always been the underdog, the species that surprised their enemies with new, unpredictable tactics. And this time would be no different. Alina's mind raced with possibilities. The Galactic Council's fleet was vast, their technology far superior to Earth's in many ways. Yet they had made a fatal mistake in underestimating humanity's resourcefulness. Alina knew they wouldn't fight the same way the Council expected. They wouldn't charge in blindly or wait for orders. They would wait, hidden in the shadows, biding their time until the perfect moment. The door to the command center opened with a soft hiss, and an officer entered. His face was grim. "Captain, we've detected a fleet of unknown vessels just outside the system. They're closing in fast." A cold shiver ran down Alina's spine. At first, she thought it might be the Council scouts, perhaps an advanced unit sent ahead to survey Earth's defenses. But as the officer continued, her heart sank. "They're human," the officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Human." Alina's brow furrowed. "Who?" "We've already mobilized all our ships." The officer tapped his console quickly, bringing up the signal. I don't know, Captain. They're not part of the regular fleet, but they're using Earth's military codes." A sense of unease settled over the room. It wasn't like Earth to have hidden assets, not without her knowing. Yet the timing was perfect, another unexpected element in the battle that could change everything. Alina leaned forward, studying the data on the screen. It was clear these ships were no ordinary fleet. The design was unfamiliar, their markings unlike anything the Council had seen before. They were fast, and they were moving directly towards Earth. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment too. "Open a communication channel with them," Captain Alina commanded, her voice firm but cautious. The officer hesitated but obeyed. The screen flickered, and a face appeared, one she recognized immediately. "General Marlowe?" Alina asked, disbelief in her tone. The image of General Marlowe, an old ally from Earth's deep space military, appeared on the screen, but something about him seemed off. His face was worn, like someone who had seen too much. His eyes had a tired, haunted look, but when he spoke, his voice was steady, confident. "Captain Alina," he said, nodding solemnly. You probably weren't expecting us. Alina could barely keep her composure. I don't understand. How? How are you here? General Marlowe's lips curled into a grim smile. We've been waiting. We've been preparing for this day long before the Galactic Council even thought of taking Earth's peace for granted. The truth hit Alina like a wave. There were forces on Earth she hadn't known about, forces that had operated in secrecy for years. A hidden fleet, a secret faction of the military, ready for war even when the rest of humanity thought it was safe. How many ships do you have? Alina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. We've got 35 ships, Captain. Enough to make a difference. Her breath caught in her throat. 35 ships, all equipped with the latest technology and capable of turning the tide in Earth's favor. But that wasn't all. Why didn't you come sooner? Alina asked, her tone sharp, but her mind was already racing. They could use this fleet. If they joined forces, Earth might stand a chance. But the question lingered in the back of her mind. Why had General Marlowe and his fleet stayed hidden for so long? We were waiting for the right moment, Marlowe replied. And now, the time has come. The transmission cut off abruptly. Alina stood motionless, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence in the room was deafening. For the first time in her military career, Captain Alina felt a spark of hope, a tiny flicker that Earth could win. But it came with a heavy weight. The Council's fleet was still closing in. And now, with the arrival of this mysterious fleet, the stakes had just become even higher. Earth was no longer just fighting for survival. It was fighting to reclaim its place in the galaxy. Captain Alina took a deep breath. We'll use every advantage. Prepare to deploy the hidden fleet. The time for waiting is over. We fight now. Outside, in the cold expanse of space, the two fleets began to close in. Earth's hidden fleet, silently making its way toward the front lines, and the Galactic Council's fleet, confident in its strength and superiority. The game had begun. The tension in the command center was palpable, hanging like a thick fog. Captain Alina stood at the head of the room, watching the incoming data with a cold, calculated focus. The Galactic Council's fleet was approaching fast, and soon there would be no turning back. Their arrogance had led them to underestimate Earth. Now it was time to show them that humanity wasn't a species to be taken lightly. General Marlowe's fleet will be in position in less than an hour, said Lieutenant Jameson, his voice calm but tinged with urgency. We have to make sure our first move counts. Alina nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic map. There was no room for mistakes. The Council's fleet was formidable, and their strategy was based on overwhelming force. They would expect Earth's military to be weak, disorganized, and unable to defend itself against their superior technology. But Alina had different plans. We won't give them the chance to strike first, Alina said, her voice low but commanding. We'll launch the first wave as soon as General Marlowe gives the order. The officers in the room exchanged glances, and Alina could feel the weight of their gazes. It wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was about something bigger. The survival of Earth, of their families, their homes. The human race itself was on the line. Alina turned to the communication officer. Get me General Marlowe. Now. The officer nodded quickly, fingers dancing over the console. A few tense moments later, General Marlowe's face appeared on the screen. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed the seriousness of the situation. Captain, we're in position, Marlowe said, his voice steady. Our fleet is ready to launch. The first strike is ours. Alina felt her heart race as she locked eyes with the general. This was the moment they'd all been preparing for, the moment that would decide the fate of Earth. Good, Alina replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Let's show them what Earth is made of. The command center erupted into activity as the fleet's officers carried out their orders. Across Earth's hidden fleet, every ship began to power up, their engines humming to life. Thousands of kilometers away, the Galactic Council's fleet continued its slow, methodical approach. unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. Elena gave one final look at the map, watching as the Council's flagship cruised along its predetermined path. It was a massive ship, bristling with weapons, its size alone enough to intimidate any opponent. But Elena wasn't intimidated. She had seen humanity face far worse and still rise. The plan was simple: strike fast, hit hard, and make it personal. Earth's fleet had been designed for speed and surprise, with weapons tailored to hit the Council's weaknesses. Elena knew that if they could land the first blow, they could force the Council into a defensive position and keep them off balance long enough to disrupt their plans. "Launch the first wave," Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. Across the fleet, the signal was sent. Earth's warships surged forward, their engines roaring as they tore through space at breakneck speed. The Council's fleet was still on its course, unaware of the incoming danger. But that would change in just moments. The first wave of Earth's fleet was made up of smaller, faster ships, designed for hit-and-run tactics. These ships would close the distance quickly, strike the Council's weaker vessels, and then retreat before the larger, slower Council ships could react. They were outnumbered, but they had the element of surprise on their side. As the warships entered the range of the Galactic Council's fleet, Elena's grip tightened around the console. It was time. "Prepare for engagement," she said, her eyes narrowing as the tension in the room grew. "Make every shot count." The first volley of weapons fire erupted from Earth's fleet, a barrage of laser blasts and plasma missiles that lit up the void of space. The Galactic Council's ships were caught off guard, their shields flaring as they tried to react. But it was too late. The attack had already begun. "Direct hit," shouted Lieutenant Jameson as one of the smaller Council ships erupted into a brilliant explosion, its hull torn apart by the precise strike. Earth's fleet didn't stop. The second wave was already on its way, and the Council's ships were struggling to reorganize. Captain Elena watched as the enemy fleet scrambled to respond. The shock on their faces was evident, even from this distance. They had never expected a fight like this. They thought humanity would crumble at the first sign of aggression. But instead, they had awoken a sleeping giant. "Keep the pressure on them," Elena barked. "Don't let up." The warships of Earth surged forward, their weapons firing in perfect sync. More Council ships were hit, their shields collapsing under the onslaught. The Galactic Council's flagship, the pride of their fleet, fired back with devastating force, but Earth's ships were too quick, darting in and out of range, exploiting every weakness. And then, just as the Council began to regroup, General Marlowe's fleet arrived, like a hammer crashing into the already fractured enemy. With their firepower and strategic positioning, the additional ships turned the tide even further in Earth's favor. Elena felt a surge of exhilaration as she watched the Council's fleet falter. It was happening. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were fighting back. The first strike had been successful, but this was just the beginning. "We've got them on the ropes," Elena muttered, watching as the Galactic Council scrambled to reorganize. "Now, let's finish this." But even as Earth's fleet gained ground, Elena knew the battle was far from over. The Council's retaliatory strike would come. They would learn from their mistakes, adapt, and strike back with all their might. But for now, Earth had taken the first step, and it had sent a message. Humanity was done being pushed around. The battle in the vastness of space raged on, the vacuum echoing with the sounds of explosions and the intense hum of weapons fire. Earth's fleet had dealt a devastating blow to the Galactic Council's forces, but Elena knew better than to think victory was within reach. The first wave of Earth's ships had been successful, but the Council was far from defeated. They were regrouping, recalculating, and preparing for a counterattack. Elena stood at the helm of the command center, her eyes focused on the main screen, watching as the Galactic Council's ships began to form new battle lines. Their movements were swift, precise, and deliberate. The Council was no longer caught off guard. They were adapting, adjusting their strategy to take full advantage of their superior numbers. "Prepare for their counterattack," Alina said calmly, though she could feel the tension rising in the room. Her officers moved quickly, their fingers flying over controls, relaying the orders to the rest of the fleet. Despite the damage they'd inflicted, Earth's ships were still vastly outnumbered, and every second counted. The Council had powerful weapons at their disposal, and Alina knew their retaliation would be brutal. The key to survival was evading the worst of it while maintaining the offensive. She had to ensure that the human fleet remained one step ahead. A sharp voice interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we've detected a massive surge in their energy output. They're preparing for something big." Alina's heart skipped a beat. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," the officer replied, the worry evident in his voice. "They're locking on to our lead ships. If we don't break their line, we'll lose our advantage." Alina's mind raced. Earth's fleet had been designed for speed and surprise, not for a drawn-out war of attrition. They had to keep the pressure on, or risk being overwhelmed by the Council's sheer firepower. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Do not allow them to target our lead ships," Alina ordered. As the fleet darted and wove through space, the Council's ships fired their deadly barrage. Lasers and plasma blasts flew past, missing by mere meters, narrowly avoiding Earth's ships. For a moment, the human fleet seemed to dance through the chaos, evading every strike with terrifying precision. But it wasn't enough. A massive beam of energy slammed into the side of one of the Earth warships, the impact so violent that it sent shockwaves through the entire fleet. The ship's hull buckled, and sparks flew from the control panels. Alina's heart sank as she watched the damage unfold. "Damage report," she barked. "Starboard engine core is down. Shields are at 30%, came the reply. "Get them out of there." Immediately, Alina shouted, her voice sharp as the urgency of the situation mounted. She knew the fleet couldn't afford to lose another ship. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Red Tail," Lieutenant Jameson said, his voice tense. "They've been hit hard. They need backup." Alina clenched her fists, her mind racing. The Red Tail was one of the faster ships, designed for hit-and-run tactics. It couldn't be left behind, not when it was so integral to Earth's strategy. "Redirect the fleet. Protect the Red Tail at all costs," Alina ordered. "Do not let the Council isolate it." Her orders were instantly relayed to the rest of the fleet. As Earth's ships maneuvered to form a protective line around the Red Tail, the Council's forces responded with their own deadly precision. More ships fired, their laser blasts scorching the space around them. The battle had escalated into a deadly game of cat and mouse, each side using every trick in their arsenal to outsmart the other. For a brief moment, Alina allowed herself to think back to the calm before the storm. It seemed like a lifetime ago, back when humanity had still been caught off guard by the threats of the galaxy. But now, Earth was fighting with everything it had. Each ship was a symbol of humanity's resolve, each captain and crew member embodying the unyielding spirit of their people. But there was no time to reflect now. The Council's retaliation had arrived, and Earth's fleet was locked in a deadly struggle for survival. The first wave of Council ships had been crushed under the weight of Earth's surprise attack, but now their true power was showing. Massive warships, towers of weaponry and armor, opened fire on Earth's vulnerable ships. Their lasers tore through space, and the shockwaves from their blasts rattled the remaining Earth warships. "Brace for impact," Alina shouted. "Return fire with everything we have." With that order, Earth's warships responded in kind. Explosions rocked the enemy fleet, their shields flashing under the barrage of Earth's retaliatory fire. But the Council was relentless. Their flagship, a colossal behemoth, fired another devastating shot. And this time, it found its mark. A massive explosion lit up the darkness of space as one of Earth's cruisers erupted in a fiery ball, its hull torn asunder. The ship had been one of their strongest, a symbol of Earth's defiance. Alina's stomach churned as she watched the flames consume the vessel, knowing that it would be a while before they could recover from this loss. "We can't keep this up forever," Lieutenant Jameson said quietly, his voice tight with worry. "We need a plan, and we need it fast." Elena's eyes narrowed as she analyzed the situation. She had expected the Council to retaliate, but their response was faster, stronger, and more coordinated than she had anticipated. If they didn't change tactics, Earth's fleet would be ground down to nothing. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Elena said, her voice firm. "Target their command ships. If we can take out their leadership, we can disrupt their coordination." "Yes, Captain," Lieutenant Jameson said, and the orders were relayed throughout the fleet. As Earth's ships adjusted their targets, Elena's heart raced. She could feel the weight of every decision now, the responsibility of millions of lives hanging in the balance. The first strike had been a success, but the true test of humanity's strength would come when they faced the full force of the Galactic Council. The game was far from over. The deafening silence of space was broken only by the low hum of the fleet's engines as Elena stood at the command center, her eyes focused on the view screen. The battle raged on, but something had shifted. The Galactic Council was relentless, but Earth's resolve had only grown stronger in the face of overwhelming odds. "Captain, we've detected a weak spot in their formation," Lieutenant Jameson reported, his voice filled with urgency. "If we strike now, we can cripple their command structure." Elena's heart skipped a beat. It was a moment they had been waiting for, a rare opening in the enemy's otherwise impenetrable defenses. This was their chance to shift the balance of power. "Prepare the fleet," Elena ordered, her voice steady, despite the rising tension. "We'll take them by surprise." The human fleet, battered but unbroken, began to shift positions. Their maneuverability, the one advantage they had over the Council, was put to use. Each ship took up a new position in the formation, ready to launch a counterstrike. The tension in the command center was palpable as the officers and crew waited for the right moment to act. On the view screen, the Council's massive warships continued to maintain their formidable defense, their lasers cutting through space with terrifying precision. But Elena knew their strength was in their numbers, and if she could strike at their command ships, the rest would follow. The Council's ships, though powerful, lacked the speed and agility of Earth's fleet. They had become predictable, which was something Elena could exploit. "Now, Lieutenant," Elena said, her voice commanding, "launch the strike." With a single order, the human fleet surged forward. The flagship led the charge, followed by the rest of the fleet, each ship moving with calculated precision. In the distance, the Council's fleet was momentarily caught off guard. The human ships, known for their speed and cunning, split into smaller groups, flanking the enemy's formation. It was a tactic they had perfected, honed through years of training and survival. "We're in position," one of the officers called out. "Ready to fire." "On my mark," Elena replied, her gaze never leaving the screen. 3, 2, 1, now. In an instant, a barrage of missiles, lasers, and plasma beams tore through the cold expanse of space. The sheer power of the human assault was overwhelming. Explosions erupted across the enemy fleet as missiles slammed into Council warships, their shields buckling under the force of the attack. The once unshakable Council fleet faltered as Earth's ships systematically dismantled their defenses. Elena watched with a mix of pride and fear as the attack unfolded. This was it, the turning point. She could see it in the enemy's movements. They were scrambling, trying to adapt, but the precision of the human fleet was too much. Every shot was aimed with deadly accuracy, every maneuver calculated for maximum impact. "We've breached their command ship's defenses," Lieutenant Jameson exclaimed. "We've taken down their forward shields." The Council's flagship, a massive vessel that had been the heart of their assault, was now vulnerable. Elena's heart raced. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. She knew if they could destroy the Council's leadership, the rest of their forces would collapse. "All ships, focus your fire on the flagship," Elena ordered. "Now is our chance to end this." The human fleet converged, their weapons trained on the Council's flagship. In a coordinated strike, dozens of missiles, plasma blasts, and railgun rounds tore through the enemy vessel's defenses. The flagship groaned under the assault, its shields flickering before finally failing. But the Council wasn't ready to give up just yet. Incoming reinforcements, another officer shouted. They're bringing in their reserve fleet. Alina's heart sank. Just as it seemed like victory was within their grasp, the Council unleashed their trump card, a massive fleet of warships that had been hidden until now. They were here, and they were furious. The sheer size of the incoming fleet dwarfed the human forces. Alina had thought they were winning, but this new wave of enemy ships was a game-changer. "Captain, we need to retreat," Lieutenant Jameson shouted, his voice tight with panic. "This is too much." Alina hesitated, her mind racing. Retreat wasn't an option, not now. The human fleet had already struck a devastating blow to the Council, but they couldn't afford to back down. Not when victory was so close. "Prepare for Phase 2 of the counterattack," Alina said, her voice unwavering. "We've got one more move to make." The crew looked at her, uncertain but willing to follow. Alina had a plan, and she wasn't about to let the Council take it from her. "All ships, engage the reserve fleet with everything we've got," she barked. "Do not give them a chance to regroup." The human fleet's weapon systems flared to life once again, and despite the overwhelming numbers of the Council's reinforcements, Earth's ships pushed forward with determination. The battle was no longer about numbers, it was about will, and humanity had more than enough of that. As the massive new wave of Council warships descended on them, the human fleet fought like never before. Explosions rang out in all directions as Earth's ships engaged in a desperate struggle to hold their ground. But in the chaos, Alina saw something remarkable. The Council was beginning to falter. Their ships were slowing down, their attacks growing less coordinated. "Yes," Alina whispered under her breath, her heart swelling with hope. "They're losing their nerve." The tide was beginning to turn. Humanity had struck back, and the Galactic Council was realizing just how costly their decision to underestimate Earth had been. The war had been raging for what felt like hours, but the fatigue of battle was nothing compared to the adrenaline coursing through Alina's veins. The sudden arrival of the Galactic Council's reinforcements had thrown Earth's fleet into disarray, but the crew had rallied. Now they were fighting harder than ever before. The human ships, though vastly outnumbered, fought with unparalleled ferocity, their tactics unpredictable and brutal. In the heart of the chaos, Alina stood at the helm of the flagship, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The dark void of space outside was illuminated by the flashing explosions of the ongoing battle. Earth's fleet had taken heavy losses, but they had delivered a crippling blow to the Council's forces. Alina could see the signs of panic among the enemy. Their ships were beginning to break formation, retreating in small, disjointed groups. The once proud Galactic Empire was starting to fracture under the pressure of a humanity that refused to bow. "Captain," Lieutenant Jameson's voice cut through her thoughts. "The Council's command ship is starting to pull back. They're retreating." Alina's lips tightened. She knew this moment was crucial. The Council was retreating, but if they could pull back their leadership and regroup, they could strike again with devastating force. Earth couldn't let them escape. Not now. "All ships, this is our moment," Alina commanded, her voice calm but filled with determination. "We push forward. Do not let them escape. Destroy their command ship." The human fleet, though battered, responded with relentless resolve. Their weapons roared to life once again, unleashing a barrage of firepower aimed directly at the Galactic Council's flagship. The Council's ship, though heavily armored, could not withstand the fury of the human fleet. Explosions erupted across its surface as the missiles and lasers struck their mark, sending shockwaves rippling through space. "Direct hit on their shields," one of the officers shouted. "Their outer defenses are failing." But just as Alina's hopes surged, a new threat emerged on the horizon. A fleet of smaller ships, their black hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars, emerged from the shadows. It was the Council's secret weapon, an elite squadron of ships, faster and more agile than the human fleet, designed specifically for situations like this. "Captain, incoming," Lieutenant Jameson warned. "They're closing in fast." The new threat was relentless, and it wasn't just their firepower that made them dangerous. It was their speed. The elite squadron darted around the human ships with surgical precision, striking at the most vulnerable points. Earth's fleet was already struggling to hold its ground, and now they were being pushed to the brink. The battle was over, but the cost was clear. The remains of Earth's fleet floated silently in the cold void of space, a grim reminder of the price they had paid. The once proud ships, now battered and scarred, drifted like forgotten relics of a war that had almost torn them apart. Alina stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out into the vast emptiness, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Victory, yes, but at what cost? "Captain," Lieutenant Jameson's voice broke through her thoughts, his tone subdued. "We've received the final report. We've lost nearly a third of our fleet, but we've crippled the Council's forces. They won't be able to retaliate anytime soon." Alina nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the debris fields outside. The enemy was in retreat, their command ship destroyed, their forces scattered. Yet the weight of the lives lost hung heavy on her shoulders. This was not the victory she had imagined. The destruction had been too great, the sacrifices too many. "We did what we had to," Alina replied, her voice soft but resolute. "But I won't pretend it wasn't a hard price to pay." Jameson hesitated before speaking again. "Captain, there's something else you should see." He motioned to the view screen, where a new message had just come in. It was from the Galactic Council, a last-ditch effort to save face after their humiliating defeat. Alina's eyes narrowed as she read the message. "We surrender. Earth has proven itself to be a force beyond our control. The Council will cease its campaign against you. We offer peace and acknowledgement of your strength." The words hung in the air for a long moment. Alina didn't respond immediately. She wasn't sure how to feel about this sudden offer. The Council had pushed them to the brink, had tried to break them, to force Earth into submission. Now, after the crushing defeat, they'd wanted peace. The hypocrisy was almost too much to bear. "Captain," Jameson said softly, "what do we do now?" Alina turned her gaze away from the screen and looked out at the remnants of the battle. The stars were distant, cold, and unmoving. She had always believed that Earth's strength lay in its unity, its defiance, its refusal to back down in the face of overwhelming odds. But this peace offer felt empty, hollow. "We don't need their peace," Alina said firmly. "We've proven who we are. They can offer peace, but it's not for them to decide. We'll make our own future." She turned to her crew, her resolve hardening. "Prepare the fleet. We're not finished yet. The universe needs to know that humanity doesn't just survive, it thrives. We won't be pushed around anymore." As the crew sprang into action, Alina felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Earth had sent a message across the stars, a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. Humanity was not to be underestimated. She had seen the faces of those who had fought alongside her, brave men and women who had stared down impossible odds and refused to back down. They were the true victors of this battle. They had made it clear that Earth, and humanity as a whole, would not be controlled or oppressed. Alina's eyes narrowed as she gazed out into the starry expanse. The Galactic Council had learned a painful lesson today, that the galaxy was a vast, dangerous place. There would be more enemies, more battles. But Earth had proven one thing. It was not afraid to fight, not afraid to stand tall, and certainly not afraid to make its own destiny. As the fleet began to regroup, Alina knew that the real challenge was yet to come. The Council might have fallen back, but there were others out there, ruthless factions and ancient powers that would see humanity as a threat. But that was fine, because humanity, in all its flawed, beautiful, and relentless nature, was just getting started. Elena turned to face her crew once more. "We are the new force in the galaxy, and we'll make sure everyone knows it." The bridge erupted in cheers, but Elena didn't join them. She was focused on the stars ahead. This victory was a start, not the end. Humanity had shown its power, but now it was time to ensure that power wasn't just a fluke. It was time to build a future that no one, not even the Galactic Council, could threaten.